William confronts Camilla with evidence after guard shows deleted hospital photos. William had always believed that he understood the rhythm of his life. Everything felt predictable in a comforting way. He woke up each morning, prepared for work, exchanged a few warm words with Camilla, and returned home to enjoy quiet evenings together. Their relationship was built on routine and small gestures: morning tea, shared grocery runs, weekend walks, and long conversations that stretched into the night. That was how it had always been, and William never imagined it could feel any different. But over the past few weeks, something had changed, quietly, almost invisibly at first, like a soft breeze that eventually becomes impossible to ignore. Camilla, who once told him everything, now spoke in short sentences. Instead of sharing stories about her day, she would simply say she was tired or needed rest. She laughed less, stayed indoors more, and kept her phone close at all times. At first, William tried to convince himself that she was simply stressed, perhaps from work or from her family responsibilities. He wanted to give her space, thinking she would eventually open up when she felt ready. He reminded himself that everyone had moments of silence, days when they felt heavy without knowing why. But the silence Camilla carried was different. It wasn't just quiet, it felt distant. He noticed she had started leaving the house at odd hours. Sometimes she would say she was meeting a friend, other times she claimed she had extra tasks at work. William believed her at first because trust had always been natural between them. But there was something unusual about the way she avoided his eyes whenever she explained where she was going. Her smile never reached her eyes anymore, and her voice trembled ever so slightly. One evening, William sat alone on the couch, staring at the door long after Camilla had stepped out. She had left with her bag clutched close to her chest, saying she might be late. The house felt unusually quiet. The clock ticking on the wall sounded louder, the air felt heavier, and William found himself wondering why he felt so uneasy. He didn't want to doubt her, but his mind kept replaying small things he had ignored before. How she now flinched when he asked simple questions. How she avoided conversations that used to come naturally. How she checked the time constantly as if she were worried about something. The next morning, still troubled, William went to work early. At the entrance, he greeted Marcus, a friendly security guard who had known him for years. Marcus usually smiled brightly and cracked small jokes to lighten everyone's day. But today, his smile faded the moment he saw William. "Sir, can I speak with you for a moment?" he asked, glancing around as if making sure no one else was listening. William raised an eyebrow. "Is everything all right?" Marcus hesitated. His eyes showed concern, and it was obvious he was struggling to decide whether to say what he had on his mind. Finally, after a long pause, he nodded slightly and gestured for William to step aside. "I don't want to worry you," Marcus began slowly, "but I think there's something you should know. I wasn't sure if I should say anything at all, but I felt it would be wrong to ignore it." William felt a sudden tightness in his chest. "Tell me," he said quietly. Marcus cleared his throat. "A few nights ago, I happened to be on duty near the parking area of the private wing of the hospital. I saw someone I thought I recognized entering through the back entrance." William held his breath without realizing it. Marcus continued gently, "It looked like Camilla." For a moment, the world around William seemed to stand still. The distant chatter of employees, the hum of traffic outside, even the soft breeze brushing past the doorway, everything faded into a quiet blur. He blinked hard. "You must be mistaken," he whispered, though he wasn't sure whether he was trying to convince Marcus or himself. "I thought so too," Marcus replied carefully, "but she passed right under the security light. I got a clear look." William's thoughts raced. Why would Camilla visit a hospital late at night? Why hadn't she told him? He thought of all the times she claimed to be at work or with friends. A slow ache settled in his chest. "Did she look unwell?" he asked, his voice barely steady. Marcus shook his head. "I couldn't tell." She walked quickly, kept her face partly covered, and didn't look around. He hesitated again, then added, "I was required to document everyone who passed through that entrance. I took photos as part of standard procedure. But later that night, I got an unexpected order to delete them." William looked up sharply. "Delete them? Why?" "I don't know," Marcus admitted, "but something felt unusual, so before deleting them from one system, I saved a backup in a secure archive. I've kept it quiet because I wasn't sure whether it was my place to say anything." William's pulse quickened. There were photographs, actual proof, not just hearsay or guesses. Part of him desperately wanted to refuse the idea. He wanted to hold onto the version of Camilla he knew, the one who laughed at his jokes, who shared her dreams with him, who held his hand on long walks. He forced himself to speak. "Can I see them?" Marcus nodded solemnly and asked William to wait until his break. The hours leading up to that moment felt painfully long. William tried to focus on his work, but his thoughts drifted constantly. Every memory of Camilla suddenly felt heavier, her recent quietness, her late nights, her withdrawn smiles. He kept telling himself that there had to be a reasonable explanation. Maybe she was helping a friend. Maybe she was volunteering. Maybe she was dealing with something personal and didn't want to worry him. But deep down, an uncomfortable truth sat like a stone in his stomach. If everything were innocent, why would she hide it? Why would she delete the evidence? When Marcus finally returned, he looked serious. "Are you sure you want to see them? Once you do, you can't forget them." William nodded. "I need to know." Marcus opened his secured device and retrieved the archived file. There were only a few images, taken from a distance but clear enough to confirm the identity. William leaned closer, his breath trembling. There she was, Camilla, walking into the hospital wearing a long coat, her scarf pulled high around her face and her bag gripped tightly. She looked tense, constantly glancing at the ground. The timestamp on the photos matched one of the nights she had told him she was working late. William felt his heart sink slowly, like a ship settling into deep water. He wasn't angry, at least not yet. What he felt was confusion, sadness, and fear. Fear that something was wrong, fear that she was keeping secrets, fear that the life he thought he knew was slipping away. He studied the photos again, hoping to find something that would change the meaning, anything. But the images were clear. There was no misunderstanding. Marcus spoke softly. "I'm sorry, sir. I didn't want to get involved, but I couldn't ignore something that might be important to you." William nodded slowly. "Thank you for telling me." But his voice sounded distant, as though coming from someone else. All day he struggled to keep himself composed. His hands shook slightly whenever he thought about the photos. Each hour felt longer than the last, and every minute brought a new wave of questions. Why hadn't Camilla told him she was going to the hospital? Was she ill? Was she in trouble? Was she hiding something painful? He wanted to believe the best. He wanted to believe that she simply didn't want to worry him. But as he replayed her recent behavior in his mind, the silence, the distant looks, the late nights, he couldn't shake the feeling that whatever she was hiding wasn't small. When William finally left work that evening, he didn't go home right away. Instead, he wandered the nearby park, walking aimlessly without noticing the fading daylight. His mind drifted through memories. Their first date, the first time she laughed at one of his silly jokes, the day they moved in together, the nights they planned their future. He found himself wondering whether those memories still held the same meaning for her. Eventually, as the sky turned a soft shade of blue and the streetlights flickered on, William made his way home. The house looked the same as always, calm and familiar, yet the moment he stepped inside, he felt a weight settle around him. Camilla wasn't home yet. The silence wrapped around him, thick and unsettling. He walked to the table and sat down slowly, placing his hands flat against the cool surface. His heart ached, not from anger but from the fear of the unknown. He knew he couldn't ignore what he had learned. He needed answers, honest answers. He needed to understand why she had kept something so important hidden from him. And though he dreaded what he might find, he also knew one thing clearly. The truth, whatever it was, could no longer stay in the shadows. The next morning arrived slowly for William. He had barely slept, and when he finally opened his eyes, the room felt heavy with questions he couldn't escape. Camilla was still asleep beside him, her breathing soft and steady, her face peaceful in a way that only made his confusion grow. How could someone who seemed so calm be carrying a secret so large that she hid entire hospital visits from him? He watched her quietly for a few moments. There was a time when he could read every small expression on her face. He used to feel that he knew her better than he knew himself. But now, looking at her felt like looking at a stranger wrapped in familiar features. He didn't want to wake her. He didn't want to start the day with questions he wasn't prepared to ask. So he got up silently, moved around the room in slow steps, and left for work earlier than usual. The cool morning air did little to clear his mind. Every step he took felt heavier than the last. At work, people greeted him as they always did, but he found it hard to return their smiles. His thoughts kept circling back to the images Marcus had shown him. They replayed like scenes from a film, Camilla walking briskly toward the hospital entrance, hiding her face under her scarf, glancing around as if she didn't want to be recognized. The more William thought about it, the more questions rose in his mind. Why a private wing? Why at night? Why all the secrecy? He sat at his desk, staring at his computer screen, but the words in front of him made no sense. His mind wasn't in the office. It was stuck somewhere between confusion and fear. Around mid-morning, Marcus approached him again. This time he looked even more careful, as though he didn't want to overwhelm William further. "Sir," he said in a gentle tone, "I hope I didn't upset you yesterday. I only told you because I thought you deserved to know." William sighed softly. "You did the right thing." "Thank you," Marcus hesitated. "There is one more thing. I didn't mention it yesterday because I wasn't sure if it mattered." William straightened slightly. "What is it?" "The request to delete the photos," Marcus said slowly, "didn't come from hospital staff. It came from someone outside the hospital, someone who wasn't identified clearly in the system." This new detail struck William harder than he expected. Why would anyone apart from hospital staff care about those photos? Who even knew Camilla had been there? And why would they want the evidence gone? Could it have been a mistake? William asked, trying to cling to any logical explanation. Marcus shook his head. "The order was marked as urgent. I checked twice to make sure it wasn't a system error." William leaned back in his chair, his thoughts spinning faster. The idea that someone else was involved added a new layer of mystery. It wasn't just about Camilla hiding something. It was about someone else helping her hide it, or hiding it for reasons William couldn't understand yet. "Do you know which department the request came from?" William asked. Marcus sighed. "No, it was routed through a high-level authorization. I wish I could tell you more." William nodded, though his mind felt anything but calm. He appreciated Marcus's honesty, but the information only deepened the uncertainty. After Marcus left, William sat in silence, tapping his fingers lightly on the desk. He didn't want to jump to negative conclusions. He didn't want to imagine scenarios that weren't real, but the facts were becoming harder to ignore. Camilla visited a private hospital wing at night. She tried to hide her identity. Someone ordered the photos to be deleted. Each piece felt like part of a larger picture, when he was not yet allowed to see. He stepped outside to get some fresh air. The sun had risen higher, casting a warm glow across the courtyard. People walked by, smiling, chatting, living their day without the weight he carried. William envied them. He found a quiet bench and sat down, letting the sunlight soak into his skin. He needed to think clearly without letting fear shape his conclusions. He remembered the promises he and Camilla made to each other, promises of honesty, trust, and partnership. He remembered how she always told him she would never hide anything serious from him. But now she was hiding something that involved secret hospital visits. Was she sick? Was she afraid to tell him? Was she getting help for something personal? Was she protecting someone else? He realized he had no answers, only assumptions that tugged at his heart. Later that afternoon, as he tried to focus on a meeting, his phone buzzed with a message from Camilla. "Hope your day is going well," she wrote. "I'll be home a little late today. Don't wait for me if you're tired." William stared at the message for a long time. The words were simple and polite, the way they always were, but now they felt different. They felt like part of a pattern of distancing herself from him, of keeping him out of her world. He typed a reply but deleted it. Then he typed another and deleted that too. Everything he wanted to say felt too heavy for a text message. In the end, he simply responded, "Okay, be safe." But even that small message made his heart ache. As the evening approached, the sky turned a soft orange, then deepened into purple. William left work slowly, his mind buzzing with thoughts he couldn't escape. On the way home, he stopped outside a small cafe where he and Camilla once spent hours talking. He stood by the window, remembering how she used to sit inside laughing at his stories, her eyes bright and full of life. He wondered when that light began to fade. At home, the house was quiet again. William walked from room to room, noticing little things he had overlooked before. Camilla's coat hanging on the back of the chair, her favorite mug drying by the sink, the notebook she left on the coffee table. Everything felt normal, yet nothing felt the same. He sat down and opened the notebook, hoping to find a hint, a clue, something that would explain what was happening. But inside were only grocery lists, reminders, and a few half-written thoughts about work. There was nothing unusual. Nothing that revealed the secret she was hiding. He closed the notebook slowly and placed it back where he found it. Time moved quietly around him as he waited for her to come home. With every passing minute, his heart thumped harder, not in anger, but in worry. He didn't know what she was going through, and the idea that she was facing something alone hurt him deeply. At around 9:30, he heard the door open. Camilla stepped inside, looking tired but composed. She smiled a small smile, the kind that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You're still awake," she said softly. William forced a gentle smile. "Yeah, I wanted to see you," she nodded, placing her bag on the table. It was a long day. He wanted to ask where she had been. He wanted to show her the photos and ask why she never told him. But he couldn't, not yet. He felt that if he rushed into it, she might shut down or become even more distant. He needed the right moment, a calm moment, to bring up something so heavy. Instead, he said, "Do you want dinner? I saved some for you." She shook her head lightly. "I'm not very hungry, maybe later." She sat on the sofa, taking a deep breath. William watched her quietly, noticing how she kept her hands clasped tightly, as though she were holding onto something inside herself. He sat beside her, leaving a small space between them. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. Camilla looked at him for a moment. Her eyes softened, but she quickly looked away. "I'm fine, just tired." William nodded, even though he knew she wasn't telling the full truth. They sat together in silence, the room filled only with the faint hum of the refrigerator. William felt an invisible wall between them, a wall he didn't understand when he desperately wanted to break down. But he also didn't want to push her too hard. Finally, Camilla stood up. "I think I'll take a shower," she said quietly. William watched her walk away, feeling helpless. When she disappeared into the bathroom, he closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He needed to prepare himself. The time was coming when he would have to confront her, not out of anger, but out of love and concern. He couldn't continue living in uncertainty. He couldn't pretend he didn't know about the hospital. He knew that the truth, whatever it was, would change everything. But he also knew he couldn't walk away from it, because the only thing more painful than discovering a secret was living with one in silence. And William had been silent long enough. The next morning, William woke with a kind of heaviness he had never felt before. The weight of the photos, the silence between him and Camilla, and the unanswered questions from the night before all sat inside his chest like stones. He knew he could not keep carrying those stones forever. Something had to change. Either the truth would come out, or the silence would grow so wide that it would swallow everything between them. Camilla was already awake when he walked into the kitchen. She stood near the stove, stirring something in a small pot. The gentle sound of the spoon tapping the edges of the pan filled the quiet room. She looked peaceful, as if nothing was wrong, as if there was no hidden story behind her late nights, no secret hospital visits. But William could not forget what he knew. She turned slightly when she sensed him behind her. "Good morning." Her voice was warm but soft, almost too soft, like she was trying to hide something beneath it. William forced a small smile. "Morning." He walked to the table and sat down, watching her as she continued cooking. Her movements were careful, almost delicate. She seemed lost in her thoughts, stirring without really paying attention to what she was doing. He wondered whether her thoughts were as restless as his. He wanted to speak. He wanted to ask her right then about the hospital, about everything she had been hiding. But something inside him whispered that this moment wasn't right. She looked tired, fragile, and the last thing he wanted was to confront her when she was not emotionally ready. Camilla placed a bowl of warm oatmeal in front of him and sat across the table with her own. She avoided his eyes, focusing instead on her spoon. "Did you sleep well?" she asked quietly. "Not really," William admitted. She nodded but didn't ask why. That alone told him she knew something was wrong, yet she wasn't ready to talk about it either. They finished breakfast in silence. When Camilla left for work, she hugged him briefly, but even that felt different, lighter, shorter, missing the warmth it used to hold. After she left, the house felt emptier than usual. William walked through the living room, stopping near the table where the guard had shown him the photos. He could almost see them again in his mind, the way Camilla held her scarf close to her face, the anxious curve of her shoulders, the quickness in her step. He knew he had to confront her soon. He couldn't keep pretending. But the fear of hurting her or hearing something he wasn't prepared to hear kept his steps slow. By afternoon, he found himself sitting in his office, staring at the clock instead of the papers spread across his desk. Minutes dragged. His mind was too full for work. Eventually, he decided he couldn't wait any longer. Camilla needed to tell him the truth. and he needed to hear it before the silence hollowed out everything between them, so he sent her a simple message. "Can we talk tonight? It's important." He watched the screen, waiting for a reply, feeling a strange mixture of hope and dread. After a few minutes, her response appeared. "Okay, what time?" "After dinner," he wrote. "All right," she replied. Those few words made his heart beat faster. It was happening. He was finally going to speak to her. The rest of the day moved slowly, like walking through thick fog. When he eventually arrived home, he tried to create a calm atmosphere, cooking dinner and preparing the living room so there were no distractions. He wanted the conversation to be honest, steady, and gentle. Camilla arrived a little after 7. She looked tired, carrying the same quiet heaviness she had been carrying for weeks. When she stepped inside, she seemed surprised to find dinner ready. "You didn't have to cook," she said softly. "I wanted to," William replied. They ate quietly. At times, their eyes met, but Camilla looked away quickly each time, as though she knew something was coming but didn't know how to face it. After they finished eating, William took a deep breath and spoke in a calm voice. "Camilla, can we talk now?" She froze for a second before nodding slowly. "Yes." They moved to the living room. William sat on the couch, and Camilla sat a small distance away, her hands folded in her lap. Her fingers twisted nervously, something she always did when she felt anxious. William watched her for a long moment. He didn't want to hurt her, but the truth could not wait any longer. "Camilla," he began gently, "I know you've been stressed lately, I can see it, and I don't want to pressure you, but I need you to be honest with me. I need to understand what's been happening." Camilla looked down, her eyelashes trembling. "What do you mean?" "You've been leaving the house late," William said softly. "You come home tired, you don't talk to me the way you used to, and I know you're hiding something." She said nothing. Her silence was loud. William took another breath. "Camilla, I know you went to the hospital." For a moment, she didn't move at all. Her hands froze, her eyes widened slightly, but she didn't look up. It was as though every thought inside her had suddenly come to a stop. How do you know?" she whispered. William's voice remained calm, steady, almost gentle. "A friend told me, someone who saw you there." Camilla closed her eyes, a soft breath escaping her lips. She looked as if someone had pulled the ground from under her feet. Slowly, she lifted her gaze to meet his. Her eyes were filled with fear, not fear of him, but fear of being exposed, fear of something deeper she had tried so hard to hide. "I didn't want you to know," she said softly. "Why?" William asked, leaning forward a little. "Camilla, why would you hide something like that from me? If you're unwell, if something is wrong, I should know. I want to help you." Her eyes glistened, but she blinked them quickly. "It's not that simple." "Then explain it," he said gently. "Please, I'm not upset. I just want to understand." Camilla opened her mouth, but no words came out. She looked away, pressing her fingers against her forehead as if she were trying to gather courage. William hesitated, then continued with honesty. "There were also photos. Someone took them as part of routine security work. They were supposed to be deleted, but they weren't." Her head snapped up at that. "Photos?" He nodded. "I saw them." Camilla's face turned pale. Not embarrassed pale, but frightened pale, like the truth she had been hiding had finally caught up with her. "Oh no," she whispered, her voice trembling. "This is exactly what I was afraid of." William frowned gently. "Afraid of what?" Camilla clasped her hands tightly. "Afraid that everything I tried to protect would fall apart." William's breath caught. "Protect who, Camilla? Protect yourself? Protect me? Protect someone else?" She shook her head slowly. I don't know where to start." "Start anywhere," he said calmly. "I just want you to be honest." For several long seconds, she sat silent, her chest rising and falling with slow, careful breaths. It was clear she was trying to gather the strength to speak. Her lips parted slightly, then closed again as though she struggled with every word. Finally, she whispered, "I went to the hospital for private reasons, something personal, something I was not ready to share." William felt a twist in his chest, but he kept his voice steady. "I understand that. Private things exist. But hiding it completely, Camilla, you seemed afraid, and now that I know someone else tried to hide the evidence, it scares me even more." Her eyes widened again. "Someone else?" "Yes, someone ordered the photos to be deleted." Camilla's breath caught. Her hand moved instinctively to her mouth. "No, that means they know. They must have found out." William leaned closer. "Who, Camilla, who found out?" She looked at him with pure fear. "William, I never meant for you to be involved. I never wanted this to touch your life." Her voice cracked, softer than a whisper. "But it looks like I can't run from it anymore." William reached out slowly, placing his hand near hers, not touching but close enough to show he was there if she needed it. You don't have to run. Just tell me the truth. Camilla took one long, shaking breath. Her eyes closed tightly as though she were stepping into something difficult. When she finally spoke, her voice was trembling but honest. There is something you don't know about me, William. Something from my past, and it came back. William felt the air shift. He remained silent, giving her space, giving her time. Camilla looked at him again, her eyes shining with unshed tears. And the hospital, that was the first sign. The first sign that I couldn't hide it anymore. William felt his world tilt slightly, but he stayed calm. Tell me what it is. A tear slid down her cheek, and she wiped it quickly. I will, she whispered. I promise I will. You deserve the truth. But it's not something I can say all at once. It's going to take time. William nodded softly. Then take your time. I'm here. Camilla exhaled shakily, relief and fear mixing in her expression. She placed her hand near his, trembling slightly but willing. And in that quiet moment, William knew the confrontation had only just begun. The house was quiet after their conversation, but it was not the peaceful kind of quiet William once enjoyed. It was the kind of silence that felt like a question waiting to be answered. Camilla sat beside him, still holding her hands together as if trying to keep her emotions from spilling out. William watched her carefully. He could see she wanted to speak but didn't know how to begin. He didn't want to push her too hard, but the uncertainty felt heavy inside him. Camilla took a slow breath. William, before I tell you everything, I need you to promise me something. William frowned gently. What is it? Promise me that you will not think differently of me, she whispered. Promise you won't see me as someone weak or untrustworthy. I never wanted to hide anything out of disrespect. I only wanted to protect both of us. William leaned closer, his voice calm. Camilla, I care about you. Nothing you say will make me think less of you, but I need the truth. We both need it. Her eyes filled with relief, and for a moment she simply sat there breathing slowly, as if gathering the courage she had been missing for weeks. Finally, she began. A few months ago, I started feeling unwell. Not in a serious or frightening way, just small things, frequent tiredness, headaches, loss of appetite, that sort of thing, she said quietly. I didn't think much of it at first. I thought maybe I was stressed or not sleeping enough. William listened carefully, nodding gently to show he was following. But over time, she continued, I realized something wasn't right. I didn't want to tell you because I thought it would worry you. You had your own responsibilities, your own stress, and I didn't want to add more to your mind. William sighed softly. You could have told me, I would have supported you. I know, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, but I was scared. And I kept convincing myself that it was nothing. She paused, breathing in slowly. Her fingers trembled slightly as she continued. One day, when the symptoms didn't go away, I went to the hospital during my lunch break. I thought it would be a simple checkup. But the doctor told me they needed to run more tests. They said it might be something they had to monitor regularly. William's heart tightened. He had spent days imagining painful, dramatic explanations, but hearing her say she had been silently worrying about her health made his chest ache differently, painfully, softly, in a human way. So you continued visiting the hospital in secret? He asked gently. Camilla nodded. I did. I told myself I would only go a few times, that I would tell you when I knew more. But each visit brought new questions, new tests, and still no clear answers. The doctors weren't sure what was causing the symptoms, so they sent me to a more private wing for detailed examinations. She swallowed hard. And I didn't want anyone to know, especially you. William remained calm, though he felt a mixture of sadness and confusion. But why hide it? You know I would do anything to help you. Camilla looked away. Because I wasn't just afraid of the results, I was afraid of what the truth might mean for us. I didn't know how serious it could be. I didn't want you to worry, and I didn't want to change our life by bringing in fear before it was necessary. William took a slow breath. Her reasons were understandable, yet the secrecy had still hurt him. He wanted to reach out and hold her hand. He wanted to tell her she didn't need to carry her fears alone. And the deleted photos? He asked quietly. Camilla's face softened into a troubled expression. That part isn't from my side. The hospital has strict rules. When a patient enters a special wing, they sometimes try to limit who sees records or images. It's for privacy. My case wasn't serious, but I was placed in a section where privacy is always protected. Someone must have ordered the photos removed because patients in that area are kept confidential. William absorbed her words slowly. He wasn't sure if she was telling him everything, but it did align with what the guard had hinted, that someone with high authorization had requested the deletion. "So you weren't trying to hide something from me for bad reasons," William said softly. Camilla shook her head firmly. "No, never. I just wasn't ready. I wanted to understand everything myself before involving you. I didn't want to bring you into something uncertain." William looked at her carefully. "And now?" She met his eyes slowly, her expression open and honest. "Now I know I can't face this alone, and I don't want to. Keeping secrets has only made things harder. I hate the distance it created between us. I never wanted that." William felt something warm unfold inside him, a mix of relief and empathy. He reached for her hand gently this time, and she didn't pull away. She let him hold it, her fingers cold and trembling but trusting. "What did the tests say?" he asked softly. "Are you okay?" Camilla breathed deeply. "They haven't found anything serious. They think my symptoms are connected to stress, emotional strain, or possibly a small hormonal imbalance. Nothing dangerous, but they do want me to continue follow-ups." William closed his eyes for a moment. Relief washed over him like a soft wave. She wasn't hiding something catastrophic. She wasn't keeping a painful secret to protect him from heartbreak. She was simply overwhelmed, scared, and uncertain, and she had carried that alone. He opened his eyes again, looking at her with calm determination. "Camilla, next time please don't face something like this alone. I'm with you, always." Her eyes welled up instantly. She squeezed his hand tightly, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry, William. I should have trusted you. I should have told you. But I was afraid everything would fall apart if I brought it up." "Nothing will fall apart because of honesty," William said gently. "Hiding things shakes a relationship more than facing the truth together." A tear rolled down her cheek, and this time she didn't wipe it away. She let it fall, almost as though letting go of weeks of fear and stress. "I promise," she whispered. "No more secrets, no more hiding. I want us to face everything together." William felt the words settle warmly in his heart. It wasn't just the confession that mattered. It was the courage she showed in telling him something she had feared for so long. He pulled her gently into a soft embrace, and she leaned against him, her hands resting lightly on his arms. There was no tension now, only quiet understanding between them. The air felt lighter, warmer, almost like the house had exhaled after holding its breath for weeks. They sat like that for a long time, allowing the silence to heal them instead of separating them. Moments passed without words, but they didn't need them. The closeness spoke for itself. Eventually, Camilla pulled back slightly. "There's one more thing," she said softly. William looked at her with calm eyes. "What is it?" "It's the reason I've been so stressed, the reason the symptoms started." She took another breath. "It's related to my past, something I never talked about. I thought I had moved on from it, but when the tests began, some memories resurfaced. That's why I became distant. It wasn't just fear of the hospital, it was fear of facing something I thought was behind me forever." William's heart softened even further. He cupped her hand gently. "You don't have to tell me everything today. Take your time. We'll walk through it slowly. I'm here." Camilla nodded, her expression filled with gratitude. "Thank you, truly." William noticed the way her shoulders relaxed, the way her eyes looked clearer, the way her breathing steadied. It was as if she had been carrying a heavy weight for months and had finally set it down for the first time. She leaned her head on his shoulder. "It feels better," she whispered. "Talking to you, finally letting it all out. I didn't realize how much I was hurting myself by hiding everything." William wrapped an arm around her gently. "You're not alone anymore. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out together." The room, once filled with tension and quiet fears, now felt peaceful. Their hearts were still nervous for what would come next, but for the first time in a long time, they were facing it side by side. Outside, the night sky shimmered softly, as if the world itself had settled into a calmer pace. Inside, two people finally began to rebuild the trust that had nearly slipped away. They didn't know what tomorrow would bring. They didn't know if more questions or more truths were waiting. But they knew one thing: they were no longer standing on opposite sides of a secret. And that alone was a powerful beginning. The next few days felt different for William and Camilla. The tension that had shadowed their home for weeks was slowly lifting, though not all at once. It was like the first warm day after a long winter, gentle, uncertain, but full of hope. They were careful with each other, speaking softly, walking slowly through conversations that had once felt too heavy to touch. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. It was honest. And that honesty made their home feel warmer again. William noticed that Camilla seemed more relaxed now. She didn't hold her phone tightly anymore, nor did she leave the house without explanation. She no longer avoided his eyes. Instead, her gaze felt open again, calm, a little tired, but sincere. She still had her moments of silence, but the silence wasn't distant now. It felt thoughtful, peaceful, as if she were healing. One evening after work, William found her sitting on the balcony. The sky was painted with soft shades of gold and blue as the sun slowly disappeared behind the buildings. She had a blanket around her shoulders and a notebook in her lap. She wasn't writing, just holding it, thinking. He approached her quietly. "Mind if I join you?" She smiled gently. "Please." He sat beside her, feeling the cool breeze brush against both of them. For a few minutes they didn't speak. They just stared at the sky, listening to the distant sounds of the city settling into evening. Camilla finally broke the silence. "I've been thinking a lot lately," she said softly, "about everything that happened, about how afraid I was, about how much I should have trusted you." William shook his head slightly. "We both made mistakes. What matters is that we're here now, trying." She looked at him with warm eyes. "You've been patient. I didn't expect that. I thought you'd be upset or hurt or angry." "I was hurt," William admitted gently, "not because you went to the hospital, but because you faced something alone that you didn't have to face alone. It made me feel like I wasn't part of your world anymore." Camilla lowered her eyes. "I know, and I am truly sorry. I should have come to you. I should have let you in." He touched her hand lightly. "You're here now. That's what matters." She nodded and took a deep breath as though preparing herself for something important. "There's something I want to share. I told you I would explain the rest when I was ready. I think I'm ready now." William turned slightly toward her, listening with full attention but without pressure. "When I said the hospital visits brought back memories from my past," she began, "I meant that they reminded me of a time when I wasn't doing very well emotionally. Years ago, before I met you, I went through a period of stress that affected my health. I kept everything inside back then, too. I didn't talk to anyone, and it led me to feel very lonely." Her voice softened. "When the doctors told me they needed more tests this time, I felt that same fear return. I didn't want to relive that phase of my life. I didn't want you to see me struggle or think I was weak. I thought that if I pretended everything was fine, then maybe it would be." William's heart softened. "You are not weak, you're human, Camilla. Everyone goes through difficult moments." She smiled faintly. "I know, but sometimes it's hard to remember that when you're the one going through it." They sat together for a long moment, allowing her words to sink into the quiet air around them. After a while, William said, "I want to help you with your follow-up appointments. If you're comfortable with it, I'd like to go with you next time." Camilla's expression softened into something tender. "You would do that for me?" "Of course," he said gently. "We're a team, or at least I want us to be." She nodded slowly, her eyes glistening with gratitude. "I'd like that. I'd like not to walk into that place alone anymore. It always felt so cold there. Maybe with you it won't feel that way." He smiled quietly. "You won't be alone." Something warm blossomed in her expression, trust, the kind that had felt fragile but was now beginning to strengthen again. Over the next week, William and Camilla fell into a new routine, one that involved more talking, more listening, and more understanding. They took evening walks, cooked together, and spent time reconnecting through conversations that were simple but meaningful. Every small moment felt like a step toward healing. One afternoon, William joined Camilla for her next hospital appointment. They walked into the building side by side. For the first time, she didn't grip her scarf nervously or scan the hallways with that anxious look he had seen in the photos. Instead, she held his hand, her steps steady. The doctor explained her progress clearly. Most of the earlier symptoms were improving. The test results were stable. There was nothing serious developing. She simply needed rest, support, and reduced stress. When the appointment ended, William noticed that Camilla's shoulders finally relaxed in a way he hadn't seen in months. On the way out, she stopped and looked at him. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I didn't realize how comforting it would be to have someone with me." "That's the way it's supposed to be," William replied gently. As they walked back to the car, the late afternoon sun cast a warm glow over the pavement. It felt symbolic somehow, like the beginning of something brighter after a long stretch of shade. That evening, they sat on the couch together, drinking warm tea. Camilla rested her head on William's shoulder. He wrapped his arm around her naturally, not out of habit, but out of genuine closeness. She spoke softly. You know, looking back, I think the hardest part wasn't the hospital, it wasn't the tests or the fear. It was carrying everything alone. It made me feel small and unsure. You're not alone anymore, he said. She nodded against his shoulder. I believe that now. They stayed like that, listening to the soft sounds of the night outside, the distant cars, the wind brushing against the windows, the steady rhythm of their breathing. It felt like a fresh start. A week later, Marcus, the security guard, approached William during work. Everything all right now, sir? William smiled thoughtfully. Yes, it is. Thank you again for your help. Marcus nodded with a warm smile. I'm glad things worked out. Sometimes we all need someone to talk to. William realized then that the entire journey, every confusing moment, every hidden detail, every quiet fear, had led them to a better understanding of each other. It had taught him patience. It had taught Camilla trust. And together, it had taught them the importance of facing life side by side instead of alone. That night, William returned home to find Camilla in the kitchen, humming softly as she cooked. It was a small sound, one he hadn't heard in a long time. It made him smile without even thinking. She turned, saw him, and smiled back in a way that reached her eyes fully. Welcome home, she said warmly. Those simple words felt like sunlight. William walked to her, placed a gentle hand on her cheek, and said softly, It's good to be home. They ate dinner together, talking and laughing gently. It felt natural again, like the rhythm of their life had settled back into something smooth and familiar. Later, as they sat on the couch, Camilla looked at him with quiet emotion. William, thank you for not giving up on me. He shook his head lightly. There was never a moment I wanted to give up on you. Her eyes warmed. I'm glad. Because I want our future to be stronger than anything we faced from our past. William took her hand, holding it gently. It will be. The night grew deeper outside, but inside everything felt peaceful. The long journey of confusion and secrecy had finally ended in understanding. They weren't perfect, no relationship ever was, but they were willing to learn, willing to grow, and willing to face whatever came next together. For the first time in a long while, neither of them felt afraid. They had walked through uncertainty and found clarity. They had walked through distance and found closeness. They had walked through silence and finally found their voice again. And that was the beginning of a new chapter, one built on trust, care, and a deeper bond than they had ever known.